Imagine a timeline where the transition from your favorite cartoon into its sequel series was not only a smooth one, but one giant overall leveling up of story, narrative, characterization, animation, and tone. A series that ultimately complements what came before, without using it as a springboard to tell an unnecessary and convoluted story at the cost of our beloved and storied characters. Now, snap out of your weed-encrusted stupor, and remember that this version of the timeline does not exist. Unfortunately, this is a sobering thought when it comes to any endeavor that is brimming with expectation and just doesn't deliver. Look, success is often hard to follow without falling off a cliff. But friends, all it comes down to is the writing and overall vision of the show. An intellectual property divided manifests itself as a schizophrenic amalgam of the thing that made it previously so damn good. Beast Machines, the incredibly divisive follow-up series to the much-loved Beast Wars, was one such example. But before I get into what this video series is all about, a brief trip down Memberberry Lane. It was 1999. The news came down the pipeline that Beast Wars, as we knew it, was ending with its third and final season. There were rumours at the time of a planned Season 4, with Bob, Larry and the entire team still at the helm, but that never materialised. Instead, Hasbro took the story elsewhere with a new team and a fresh approach to continuing the Beast Wars saga. This initially materialised as Beast Hunters, and eventually became known as Beast Machines. If anyone's already watched my previous video, link in description, you'll already be aware I have no strong love of the Beast Machines experience. But this enmity grew over time. During the airing though, I was all in, like any other Beast Wars fanatic. And then, after many months of waiting, we were rewarded with an early preview screening at BotCon of Season 1, Episode 1, The Reformatting. It blew our fucking minds. The reaction across the board was overwhelmingly positive, with our favourite Beast Warriors now back on the familiar and legendary grounds of their home planet Cybertron. This was going to further strengthen the link between original G1 stalwarts and the newer generation of fans who grew up with Beast Wars. It appeared the new threat was darker, the stakes were higher, and our characters were in an even shittier spot than they were before. Even with the imaginative, let's go with that, redesigns of our Maximal troop, Episode 1 set the expectation at fever pitch levels. We were left with so many questions around what went so wrong that even after winning the Beast Wars, the Maximals are back to being the underdogs on what appears to be a barren Cybertron. We also got introduced to the mindless drone antagonists of the series, the Vehicons, which ultimately is revealed to be controlled by the seemingly omnipotent Megatron, now a perched and throned deity who runs the entire planet from his citadel. My oh my, how this shit did not live up to the hype. What was so frustrating was the fact that all the individual ingredients were already there. It just needed the chef's touch to legitimize it as standing shoulder to shoulder alongside its predecessor. Instead, the show quickly devolved into a maddening and endlessly repetitious cycle. Megatron plots and mwahahas from his throne. Maximals are exploring deep caverns of Cybertron and being whiny little shits because now they need to be chakra-obsessed gurus just to fucking transform and can't seem to master it. Looking for yet another clue to awaken their conveniently amnesia-ridden databanks. Maximals eventually find a piece of the puzzle, but as soon as they barely get a sliver of information to advance the plot, enter the Vehicons to blow the shit up out of everything. Fucking Vehicons. The stormtroopers of the Transformers universe. Each and every battle lacked urgency and had zero stakes, as we knew these mindless dipshits weren't going to achieve anything. How they managed to overpower sentient Cybertronians is curious, as in flashbacks we only saw disarmed citizens being hunted down. We never saw what Megatron's civil war looked like with any of the battle-hardened bots who were resisting, or who weren't victimized by the initial viral attack. The implication is that Megatron took everyone by surprise. Perhaps even the war vets were devolved to some extent, so much that it weakened them to the point of being easily overrun by mindless Viacons. Either way, the series takes a leaf out of the bad reboot Jar Jar Abrams book by completely mystery boxing the entire fucking show. The remainder of the series plays out with our Maximals always on the back foot, always trying to piece together the events leading up to their amnesiac pursuit at the beginning of the reformatting. And it's not to say this exact premise couldn't work. It most definitely can, in the right hands. For what it's worth, I don't think any of us knew exactly what kind of sludge pit Bob Skir and Mighty Eisenberg were stepping into when they took on the job, replacing the now legendary Bob and Larry. Whether it was the initial protestation of our favourite story editors being randomly replaced, or the iffy fan interactions that resulted from Beast Machines Productions' official association with Renaud, the owner of the Bot Talk forums, which curiously was unceremoniously deleted from existence only 2 months ago. Or the depressing state of our favourite characters who deserved much better fates after saving the universe multiple times during the Beast Wars, or the soap opera level mystery boxing of which sparks are inside the 3 Viacon generals' bodies, which would lead to the head scratching question of why would Megatron choose familiar sparks in the first fucking place? Or a big one for me was not giving Rat Trap any fucking legs and making him fall in love with a sentient ficus. And I'm trying really hard not to imagine them even attempting to consummate that relationship. So there's a laundry list of substandard crud that didn't need to be there at all. And after so many repeat viewings of both series, the replay value of Beast Wars always outdoes the replay value of Beast Machines, which is something we will tackle once I do a proper rewatch and review of both seasons of Beast Machines, which I kind of bemoaned in my original video with the podcast video, but we're going to give it a crack. I'm going to be fair to it as much as I can, trying not to be as biased as I've been so far. But for now, I'm already hearing some of you responding to my criticisms by saying, hey, dickhead, if you hate it so much, why don't you just write your own follow-up series then? Well, first of all, how incredibly rude. And secondly, yeah, okay, sure. So my first love as a young kid was the written word, either reading fictional books or writing my own stories. I've since parlayed a lifetime of writing experience into various endeavours. I'm currently in the middle stages of finalising my first written work, which is a graphic novel. But writing Beast Wars fanfiction back in the day really got me even more invested in the Beast Wars universe, and gave me the impetus to flesh out the world through my own tales and imagination, but by also adhering to the rules and the lore and the continuity that the show had already set up. Thus, welcome to my vision of an ideal follow-up series to 3 seasons of Beast Wars. I'm calling it Cybertron's Dawn, the Beast Wars Chronicles. This episode will essentially be a primer for how we start off the new show, laying the foundations for what will play out over the course of, say, 2 or 3 seasons. Each video that I release will be an episode, fully scripted and described in immense detail, and I'll be aiming for the standard 13 per season. I mean, I was going to bring back fan fiction anyway, so what better way than to treat my fiction as reality, and provide an alternative option that is designed to highlight just how good everything could have been with the puzzle pieces we already had. So, let's begin. The Beast Wars have ended. No, this isn't a fake out where we will just end up resetting the same dynamics we had in Beast Wars, just on Cybertron. It ended. The Maximals won a hard-fought war. A slog that not only claimed multiple lives along the way, but irrevocably changed the minds and hearts of those who participated in it. No one leaves the theatre of war unchanged. The series also leans into the darker and adult tone that Beast Machines was trying to go for, without discarding everything that made our characters who they are up to that point. In this version of the story, we'll be leaning more into the existing characters and their personalities, and how this translates to a post-war environment, giving us a chance to focus on their personal lives away from wartime conflict. A lot of time will be dedicated to what it looks like to see our favourite characters reintegrating themselves into Cybertronian life, all of them dispersing to find their own way forward now that they are no longer part of the crew of the Axelon. Kind of reminds me of how Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin try to get back into their daily routines at the end of Return of the King, but start to quickly realise they can never really go home again. First, we start where Nemesis Part 2 left off. The Maximals, taking off on the Autobot shuttle from prehistoric Earth, make their way home via transwarp space and arrive to a hero's welcome. They are not shot down. There is no pre-existing takeover, no devolving virus, no mystery boxing of the entire plot. Megatron doesn't arbitrarily loosen his restraints and time travel forward ahead of them. In this version, the Maximals aren't complete fuckwits, so instead of tying him to the roof of the shuttle, apparently very loosely, they force Megatron into a form of stasis lock, completely neutralizing him for the journey home. This means there is no easy out for him to then escape and repeat the cycle of being the aggressor, and then the Maximals always being on the back foot. We need something a little different. So they all return home safely. Unbeknownst to them, their allies on Cybertron have been working hard to resolve their ongoing disappearance, but have had to deal with political unrest from Predacon factions that have revealed themselves to be against things like the Pax Cybertronia and the mostly cooperative Predacon Alliance. This chiefly includes the Tripredacus Council, who we first saw in the Agenda trilogy. The Council attempted to extend the Beast Wars at the end of Season 2 by denying the Maximals a chance to return home, and stopping the other factions from detecting the transwarp wave. They also actively tasked a rebuilt Ravage with getting rid of the evidence by destroying both sides, Maximal and Predacon. Upon their return, Primal leads a swift task force to hunt and capture the Tripredacus Council and any other robots who colluded with them, as not only did this extend the conflict on Earth, it also subsequently endangered the entire universe. The surviving Maximals are rewarded for their courage and bravery, with a massive ceremony honouring their achievements. A mural of their exploits is erected in Iacon. Things seem as they should. There is a sense of peace and calm for the first time in a long time. Time begins to pass as the Maximals try to reintegrate into their former lives. But like any war story, the soldier's wounds will never fully heal. There's been too much pain and loss for things to ever be the same again. Everyone finds a purpose and moves forward, but they all start to feel as if something is not quite right. Everyone feels great, but as we begin to explore their post-war lives, an overarching sense of unease starts to grow as a grand conspiracy begins to reveal itself from within. I'll just make a note before we get into the characters. The first season takes place over the course of 6 months. So we've got to give it at least that length of time for them to settle back in and for this grand conspiracy to just slowly start to reveal itself over the course of the season. Optimus Primal. The battle-weary leader. After leading a task force to arrest and imprison the Tripredacus Council and their associates for their treasonous acts in Season 2, Primal takes up a political position in an effort to get away from further armed conflicts and to prevent future ones. He remains stern and cautious. Cybertron has also gone through a mini-civil war since the Tripredacus Council's plans were exposed, reawakening old wounds between both sides made up of Maximals and Autobots, and Predacons and Decepticons, prior to Optimus and his crew's return. As such, Primal spearheads the effort to rebuild Cybertron after cleaning up the criminal element, and will be contributing heavily towards preventative measures to ensure the long-term peace. His longtime friend, Rhinox, assists him with the rebuild. Primal's overall experiences have left him slightly jaded, with less faith in his own kind to maintain the rare peace everyone is now afforded, and is subconsciously preparing for anything. This will pay off as the grand conspiracy begins to come to light, wherein he will be needed to rejoin the battle for survival. Rhinox, Primal's second in command, the most formidable of the team, but also the most gentle and understanding. One can say wise. He retires from active duty like a lot of his fellow Maximals and pursues personal passions instead. They've been at war for so long, been through so much, that he prefers to move on with his life away from the crew and from active duty, essentially choosing to stop and smell the flowers. He rediscovers his forgotten love of metalworking, fashioning, creating and designing architecture for various parts of Cybertron. While they were away, the Tripredacus Council attempted a coup, which resulted in another civil war on home soil. Rhinox is part of the rebuilding effort, looking to the future with optimism and yearning for a violence-free existence. But, like the rest of the crew, something is niggling at the back of his mind. He still maintains loose connections with everyone, but mostly remains within Primal's proximity as they've known each other the longest. They work together to refashion Cybertron for the future. Rat Trap. The self-described demolitions and tech expert decides to join civilian life after a hard-won battle with Megatron and the Predacons. He's had enough of universe-ending scenarios and instead spends his post-career pension getting wasted at the hole in the wall he mentioned in Season 2, where the servant bots are walking around minus their torso plates. He indulges his gluttony and lust, understandably so, as he was without that kind of stimulation, being stranded on Earth for so long during the Beast Wars. He eventually gets contacted by a mysterious and unknown Cybertronian who offers him a job. Rat Trap initially and emphatically tells him to go get fucked, but eventually sees the emptiness of his day-to-day life and takes up the offer. It ends up being something a bit nefarious, wherein he gets caught in the middle of a dangerous situation, and ultimately stumbles onto the grand conspiracy. This same conspiracy is woven through each character's journeys as they all find their way back to each other to tackle this new threat together. Cheetor. The young buck of the group, he still has plenty of energy to put towards further service. He joins another crew, with the main difference being he is now leading his own crew. He goes off on his own adventure in a similar vein to other exploratory crews, captaining his own vessel, the Asinonyx. Things seem to be pretty sweet for him as he settles into a well-earned leadership role. However, like everyone else, something seems a little off. Cheetor starts to get the feeling he's being distracted on purpose and being herded off-world. His senses start telling him he needs to return home, and that's when things start to go wrong. First, he can't contact anyone. Then his ship is sabotaged and can't take off. He plays a game of cat and mouse, pun intended, to ferret out the traitor or traitors, which ends up throwing him into the same conspiracy. He eventually has to make his way back home to sound the warning. Upon his eventual return, he runs into Black Arachnia, and they start spending some time together, minus Silverbolt. This rekindles the crush he had on her in Season 3 of Beast Wars, and may potentially progress beyond friendship. This is, however, a slow burn, as the grand conspiracy becomes front and center. Silverbolt. Bird Dog may be the one through line from Beast Wars to this series in terms of personality. He is almost unchanged. He remains a sea of optimism, especially now since he can explore the home he never knew, and do so with the love of his so far short life, Black Arachnia. Both him and Black Arachnia officially hook up and move into their own residence, provided for them by the Cybertronian Council, who operate from the Citadel. This is in line with all of the Beast Warriors being afforded rewards and luxuries in the capital city of Iacon for their struggles in overcoming Megatron. But Silverbolt starts having trouble balancing his newfound duties in his new home with that of tending to his burgeoning relationship with Black Arachnia. Silverbolt enters the political arena alongside Primal, but simplifies his role to that of security and bodyguard, feeling that would be the best use of his talents. Small tensions begin to surface between him and Black Arachnia as she begins to notice odd behaviors and occurrences linked to some unseen and unknown element. This eventually drives a wedge between them, with Black Arachnia pursuing her gut instincts and bumping into her old comrade Cheetor, who is also on the same trail toward unraveling the truth. Silverbolt ultimately gets wind of this, leading to overdue confrontations regarding true feelings, boundaries, and friendship. Black Arachnia. The Maximal protoform turned Predacon turned Maximal settles into a quieter existence. She initially tries to ingratiate herself into the body politic along with her significant other, Silverbolt, but finds that some in the organization are offended by her mere presence due to her past activities as a Predacon. This is a small sect, whereas the overwhelming treatment is of reverence for coming to the Autobots' aid during the events of Optimal Situation in Season 3. Without her intervention, reality itself was going to be rewritten, with the Autobots and Maximals being written out. It makes her reflect on her past enough to realize she needs to withdraw and figure out who she's going to be in this new world. Whilst on the path to finding herself, she begins to notice oddities, things that don't make sense, or actions from familiar people that seem completely out of character. This leads her down a rabbit hole towards Cybertron's darker and murkier past, eventually linking up with Cheetor and following that thread together. The Maximals will end up coming together once more, old friends ready to help each other out, but all hesitant to jump back into the fray. Megatron. Megatron is thrown into jail to await a trial for his many heinous crimes. He loses everything and becomes a shell of his former self, no longer able to operate his own agenda even when captured. He is thoroughly and unequivocally defeated, with no allies, no team, and no hope to re-emerge as a threat. He will not be the antagonist of this series. Megatron, like our Maximal heroes, is also subject to his own form of self-reflection, a jailed character that won't see much action in the beginning of the series, but will become more prominent as we go along. However, he will not make any heel turns back to villainy. He no longer has the will or resources to continue down that path, and will be provided the opportunity to gain some measure of redemption. Yes, you heard correctly, a Beast Wars Megatron redemption arc. There is no way forward for his character in a sequel series than to reassess his place in the universe and forge a different path. This will allow us to delve into his backstory prior to the theft of the Golden Disc, which kickstarted the events of the Beast Wars, to get some clarity on what motivated him to do this in the first place. I don't know about you, but that's actually a pretty fucking exciting prospect, especially from a writer's perspective. I'm mainly drawing inspiration from a recent graphic novel I read that takes place in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles IDW universe. That book was called Shredder in Hell, in which Orokusaki is completely redeemed in the eyes of the universe, with the character from that point onward never being the villain or antagonist again to the Turtles. He instead becomes their silent benefactor and watches out for them from the shadows, as a tribute to his fallen friend and comrade Hamato Yoshi. This was something that I thought wouldn't be possible with a character like Shredder. However, great writing and adherence to a single continuity made it so. But it's a fine line to walk when it comes to characters that have done so much bad in their lives. Even if there is a measure of redemption, you can't ever truly just ingratiate them into the main family somehow. So even if Megatron is redeemed, it's only because his guilty conscience is driving him toward it. It's not for some arbitrary win. So when I can see it successfully done elsewhere, it gives me confidence to tackle the same thing with Megatron. The Tripredacus Council. The 3 members made up of Cicadacon, Ramhorn, and C-Clamp, first seen in Season 2's Agenda trilogy, helped extend and engineer the near calamity that occurred on prehistoric Earth. A task force is set up and led by Primal to catch them and put them on trial. We get to see the backstory of how they first hatched their plan, up to them being hunted and jailed, along with any other surprise collaborators who assisted them in extending the Beast Wars. So more characters will start to appear as the story moves forward, and a lot of this will be subject to change as I write it, because that's just how the process goes. Hopefully this sounds at least somewhat intriguing to fans. I feel the more serialized, mature tone is necessary for those of us who started with the series young and grew right along with it. Which is kind of what Beast Machines was attempting to do, but didn't quite get there. My ultimate goal here is to create something that adheres to the lore established in Beast Wars, which also adheres to the lore set up in the original G1 series, and similar to, I guess, what the Trans-Tech series was supposed to be. If you're not familiar with that, Trans-Tech was the initial planned follow-up to Beast Machines that not only included Beast Wars and G1 characters, but also resurrected characters from the Beast Wars series and possibly from the G1 era too, all of them working together to combat a new threat. And also, as always, we got to make sure that this is actually fun, despite its more adult tone. That's definitely one of my priorities with this. So things like this, they need logical progressions forward, so you don't give the audience whiplash. Beast Wars made leaps in our characters' progressions, usually whenever they upgraded bodies. I'd cite Cheetor's transition from Season 1, 2 and 3 bodies as basically signalling his maturation in each phase. But it also coincided with the events that they encountered and lived through. This is what made our characters really come to life and fostered this level of long-term fandom. In Cybertron's Dawn, we will capitalize on all the hard work laid down by Bob, Larry, and the entire collective Beast Wars team, and at least attempt to tell a story worthy of that high pedigree. Hope to see you all tuning into the ongoing saga. Mojo out.